Yeah, like for the SZA album, we had like I don't know, we had like 4 or 5 days to mix like 24 songs and then send it to Dale. And Dale and his crew were up 24/7 for like I don't know 2 weeks anyways. But that project is he mastered the stereo and the Atmos, and we were just like on like sending stuff back and forth like 3, 4, 5 in the morning, you know. And when he was sending it to me, I was like, I don't know if I'm like unbelievably tired or if this is like the best sounding thing I've ever heard. I don't know what you're doing. And it was
Yeah.
it was the best sounding thing.
Mike Miller has been responsible for mixing some of the biggest albums of the year by artists like Harry Styles, SZA, Gunna, Tyler the Creator, and Lil Nas X in spatial audio. In today's video, I sat down with Mike to explore how he got started mixing in spatial audio and some of the gems, tips, and tricks he uses to get great sounding spatial audio mixes. And for those who are interested, Mike will be doing a Dolby Atmos mixing masterclass at Sweetwater Studio B, March 17th through 18th. A link to that will be in the description below. How did you get started in Atmos, and what made you make that initial investment in buying the speakers, buying the setup, and really just getting into Atmos?
Hmm. Um, I had some friends in the industry that were involved in um, getting this going like really early, a couple years at least before Apple started doing spatial audio and stuff. And they were nudging me pretty hard throughout the process of them doing that, even though they weren't like actually able to tell me what was really going on. Um, and I've just been hearing from them, you got to get into this. Like this is going to be like really something. And although I believe them, in my mind, I was like, how is this really going to be a thing that like everyone can consume? And then I started hearing about Apple and doing spatial audio and stuff like that. And to me, when I heard Apple, I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. And with a company like Apple, getting behind anything and putting money into like anything to me is like this is a serious thing. So I saw it as something that has a ton of potential. And also I just, we all know immersive in like spatial audio in general with like, the metaverse and the goggles and all the stuff. It's like this, it's like immersive audio is definitely the future of music. And I was like, this is going to be like, this is the start of it for sure. And I thought to myself, if this is like really happening, then this is a real like career defining moment. Like when tape, like when Pro Tools started happening and people had to go from analog tape to digital to Pro Tools. And like the people that really adapted that really like skyrocketed even more. And I felt like this is like could be like a big step in technology, which opens up a lot for pretty much anyone's career that really can get into it the right way. So I went balls to the wall.
Yeah,
And
nice.
yeah, yeah, I just invested because my mentality too is like if you're going to invest in your career, um, do literally as much as you can to unlock as much potential as you possibly can. Because like putting like having a ceiling on yourself is like very, very limiting. And I was lucky enough to be able to put a room together like what I did, you know what I mean, with the best PMCs and the best speakers and all this stuff, because I didn't want anything in my way. And when I did do that, it spatial audio, like when it was actually getting my room being done, spatial audio had come out and everyone was really complaining about how it sounded.
Mm.
And so having speakers like that I know and that I know are like limitless was one of the ways that I could remove the obstacles to figure out what I needed to do to change what was happening in order to actually get translation
Yeah,
to make
nice.
spatial audio sound good.
Yeah, I like how you kind of went all in with the
Hmm.
whole Atmos thing. I watch a lot of the Dave Pensado interviews, Pensado's place, and he always talks about
Hmm.
how about commitment and how you when you see an opportunity present itself, you're in or you're out. And I think
Yeah.
you with that full PMC setup, just saying, hey, this is I'm gonna master this thing. I see this opportunity.
Hmm.
Because I like how you mentioned in some of the previous articles I read, there's the top mixers that are there, and it's hard to they have 35 plus years of experience and
Exactly.
advantage on you if you're trying to come up
Hmm.
in stereo. Um, and yeah, I just like how you just committed and made everything work. and focused on
Thanks. Yeah.
Atmos. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. I just saw it as like that time. Like this is another period in time where someone does have an opportunity, if this is taken seriously, to really push the boundary and also get into a league where, because it's really not easy to break into this industry,
Yeah,
and in any part of the industry, as a mixer, as an engineer, as a producer, as a writer, as an artist, anything, nothing's easy. And like there are a handful of mixers that have been doing this for a really long time and that take up majority of the work and are going to until they quit because they deserve it. They earned it and they're legends.
yeah,
Um, but this new technology is an opportunity for people to come up and actually start getting credits that they would not have been able to get. And we're doing that here at the Atmosphere too, where we're bringing up engineers and giving them opportunities to get credits and kind of like break their careers open. And that's really exciting and fulfilling for me too. So
yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited for that.
yeah. That's interesting to hear. So how many engineers do you have like working under you? Uh,
So we have three mixers now that are working with us, and um, we're trying to help just like and they're great. They're great mixers, and because there's a lot of stuff like on the new releases, they have these big budgets where they can you know um put all their resources into these songs, and those are the ones, most of the ones that I do. And then there's other projects that are smaller that don't have the budgets to afford me and like what we're doing, what I'm doing. And what there's certain things that I figured out, like in the room, and it like like the coordinates of different things, like and how to translate to spatial audio, like certain things that really like set us apart. And those are things that I can easily share with my engineers. So
mm,
off the bat, like if there are like projects that don't have big budgets, I can bring it to them. They can do it in my space, and they can put their name on it, and it's going to translate it's going to sound incredible. So that's that's what we're doing right now, and it's been going good.
yeah, that's cool to hear. And I think like having engineers or assistants below you is an important part of maintaining a business, successful business. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of
Yeah,
every like top dog engineer has a team of assistants, whether people know
yeah.
about it or not, that are
Hmm.
prepping mixes or sometimes even doing like the first half of mixes. It
Hmm.
depends, but yeah, that's a big thing. So
Yeah, we have a really good system in place with like for prepping with my assistants, and like I said, also they're doing mixes as well. They're great mixers. So um, like off the bat when we get the stems and stuff, they know where things are supposed to be at what size and different things. So that when I sit down to mix, it's like those certain things I know that are going to be in a certain position and at a certain level are there, and then I can just like not have to worry about that and start mixing, and it saves a ton of time.
yeah, I'm sure the prep has got to be pretty crazy for some of these sessions and
Yeah.
stuff.
Hmm.
So getting back to like Atmos as a whole, what are some of the advantages of Atmos from a sound perspective and also from like a marketing or I guess business perspective for an artist who might want to make a new release in Atmos?
Hmm. Well, I said this on the Pensado. I say this like literally all the time, and I'm going to say it again.
Yeah.
But to me, and I think to pretty much everyone, the point of music is to connect emotionally. And these artists and producers and writers are pouring their souls into this music and spending, sometimes like years on these projects. And if the stereo is done really well, it obviously can connect emotionally. It has for a very long time. But when the Atmos is done, the spatial audio is done correctly, it just amplifies it times 100. And I've had so many producers and artists in the room, A&Rs, everybody, that they come in and when they hear it for the first time, they're just like their life literally changes. Like it is a life changing experience to like hear that correctly, especially for the producers and like the artists that are um, like I said, pouring their souls into these songs. You know what I mean? And you can really like evoke emotions so much more and higher, like when you're literally feel like you're inside the song. You know, so that's like a huge advantage, and why one of the reasons why I really believe that this is like no question the future of music, because it's literally just the next evolution times 10 basically. It's like that much more. And then also as far as like business advantages too, like Apple Music obviously cares extremely about this because it helps them sell their products and push their platform forward because their whole thing with spatial audio, that's a huge selling point for them, and it's great leverage to help push all of your music onto playlists higher and be on their front page. And a lot of artists are like doing their whole back catalog as well, and then like they'll release a new album and their back catalog at the same time, and then Apple Music will like plaster them all over, like because that's like they're a big release for them, and I think it's important for I think it's even more important for indie artists because it's just like how do you cut through all the noise as an independent artist, um, to get playlisted? It's extremely hard. But if you can cater to Apple and have a spatial audio mix, I'm sure it must be much easier to get on those playlists and get seen in more streams and more marketing.
Yeah, I think that's
So
really cool how you kind of identify the advantage that you get, like not only sound wise, but
mhm,
also business wise. You get the banners and the playlists, and like
mhm,
even someone like me, like I like to listen to some spatial audio stuff, and I
mhm.
found artists through the playlists, like I think
Yeah.
Masego or something.
Hmm.
He had that. I think Mike Dean did in spatial audio mix or something of that album, and that's how I ended up finding him, just through like a
That's
spatial audio
awesome.
playlist that's on the front page. So I think a lot of people are finding new artists that way. So
Absolutely, yeah. And also
it's
now
great.
all the cars are becoming spatial audio.
Yeah.
I just got back from CES a week or two ago, and it's all happening, and that's a perfect place to consume spatial audio because the cars already have all the speakers and everything. So that's going to be a huge push, and when you have AirPods or AirPod Maxes or Pros, um, and you listen to Apple Music, the spatial audio is defaulted. And also, I want to say for people that don't have a newer iPhone, um, putting sound check on in the settings is really important. It's really good because when you listen, it helps the normalization for everything. It makes spatial audio way louder. But so the point of me saying that too is that it's going to be defaulted in all the cars.
Hmm.
So that's another reason why it's really important for artists and labels to pay attention to who's doing their Atmos mixes and their spatial audio mixes because um, you want to make sure you don't have to do it twice.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that it's like, done right and it's what you want. It's what you have to make sure that it's like your vision. And my job as a mixer is not to put my vision on their song. I just want to make sure that it's like just a much bigger version of what they're trying to do and just execute their vision at the highest level possible.
Yeah. It's cool to hear. Yeah, I think the car thing is pretty interesting how it's coming to cars. I think I was watching some like
It's very
coverage
cool.
from NAM, last year's NAM, and they had like, I think Cadillac had something. I think they had a Tesla.
Cadillac, I think, yeah, Mercedes
Yeah,
has it
Mercedes.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Volvo just announced. Lucid has it. All the cars are gonna have it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool to hear. So when you started out in Atmos, how did you initially develop your skills? What songs were you referencing? Like how did you go about just getting better at the craft of Atmos mixing?
That's a good question. I didn't reference anything because there wasn't really a good way to do it when I started. Um, and when I first started mixing Atmos, I did it at someone else's room because it was before my room was done. And we didn't at that point we didn't really like know how to reference what would like or even reference our own mixes, like what was going to happen to it on spatial audio. And I remember like I did two songs that will remain nameless. But so I remember like mixing them in the room. I'm like, oh, this is cool. But I didn't really know the room that well. And I was like, but this is cool. And they came out and I listened on spatial audio and I was like, someone else redid this. This is not my mix. And then it turns out it was my mix. And
Yeah.
and basically, so like we all had this issue of translation where like the rooms, what we were doing in the rooms was not translating. So then I figured out how to actually audition my mixes on the phone with AirPod Maxes. I figured out how to like listen to what it would sound like, what it's going to sound like on Apple Music and spatial audio because we didn't really know how to do that before.
Yeah.
And so like there's like a process and to re-render it and like put in your files app, and it was, pretty convoluted before. It's easier now. Um, but so I figured out how to actually just audition it so I could hear what it was going to sound like on Apple Music. And that's when I just like was like, okay, I'm not doing I'm not turning in a single mix. I'm not asking for a single mix, not doing anything until I figure out this translation thing. Because I know how I want music to sound. You know what I mean? Like I'm I've been mixing for a long time, and I've been doing this for a long time. Like I know how things should translate, like not necessarily at that point how amazing spatial audio could sound, but I know how I want music to feel, and I know how I want music to sound as a mixer. So what I did was I just sat there for like a long time in my room, just like for months. Like I put like beeps and ticks in the different speakers and putting it in and out of the room in different sizes, and to basically figure out what Apple is doing with their algorithm. And I just experimented until I figured it out. And I did. I was lucky enough to figure it out. I figured out what they're doing, and I then manipulated the room around trying to figure out like the best of both worlds. And I was again lucky enough to figure out how the room needs to be um, configured basically, um, in order for it to translate to spatial audio pretty much perfectly. And luckily, there are no compromises. Like the room sounds even better now than it did, before, and it translates pretty much perfectly every time.
Who's booking you to mix these Atmos
Mhm.
records? Is it the artists themselves, like labels,
It's a
other
combination.
mixers?
It's a combination. Most of it is the labels. But then sometimes I'll get hit by the producer, and they're like, I love what you did on this. Can you do that? Can you do this? You know what I mean? And same thing with artists, and sometimes artists are hitting me to do the stereo, and then we do the Atmos as well. It comes from all areas, but I will say most is from the labels. Actually, another one is from mixers. So
Yeah.
like, for instance, my friend John Caselli, he's also my mentor. Like whatever he does in stereo, he brings to me. We do an Atmos together because he wants to make sure it's done right in the room. We have a blast mixing together,
Yeah.
so it's just fun.
So yeah, I mean that's one thing I wanted to touch on is I think it's awesome how you have that relationship with different mixers and you're kind of their go-to Atmos guy and stuff, and they send you stuff.
Hmm.
But how does the co-mixing work when you bring someone like John into working on an
Hmm.
album? Like what does that look like? What do you guys do?
Um, well, it ranges with a lot of with whoever I work with. There's like different ranges where someone will like send me like the mix, and I just do it, and then we send like back and forth if they have any notes, and then we send it out together. And like that's like the lowest form of like a co-mix that I have. But John and I are like we're 50-50. Like we go in and like when we have an album, um, sometimes I'll like sprint for a little bit, or sometimes he'll sprint for a little bit. We go back and forth, and then um, it's like a true comics where like let's just say like let's say if he starts, he'll get everything going and like get in his flow state, and then he'll be like, I'm good, like you get on now, and then we'll go, and then I'll go, and then we'll check, then we have to check like, because there's a lot of QC things, like you have to check the loudness and the true peak and stuff like that. So we're like constantly checking that throughout the mix process so that we don't like get out of hand. Like sometimes like if you're mixing and you're like, I want the kick to knock harder or whatever, and then you might be too loud or your true peak's too loud. And then you got to like kind of back off and it changes the mix. So like while you're mixing, checking that stuff in the render is important. So we'll go back and forth, and um, that's pretty much how we work on everything together. Like we're always in the room together working.
Yeah. So what are some of the albums that you guys have collaborated on as co-mixers and
Yep.
Atmos?
We did the Harry Styles album together,
Okay.
the Harry's House. We did the SZA SOS album together. We're doing the Macklemore album right now.
Cool.
Um, what else have we done together? We've done a lot of work together.
Yeah.
Um, Let me see if I can pull up. Those are like obviously pretty the most notable ones, but yeah, those are probably the biggest ones that we've done together so far. We have a couple other that we've done that are not out yet that I probably can't talk about, but
Yeah.
Harry Styles and SZA is big enough.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are some of like, the two of the probably the biggest albums of
Of the year,
the
yeah.
past, yeah, of the year.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see you guys collaborating and working. And I think co-mixing
Yeah.
is really cool. I see it happening.
Me too. We love co-mixing. Like, it's more fun. Like you just have your, you got your friends in there with you, and we're just like going back and forth and vibing off. And John and I, like, even when we first met, like, and he's started mentoring me on how to mix. Like, the reason why it worked like right off the bat and we clicked off the bat was because we had the same taste. We really love to hear things the same way. And there's, a lot of mixers that are super, super talented and very successful that, sometimes just don't have the same taste. And that's totally cool. And that's one of the reasons why some people are working on this type of record and some people are working on this type of record. But John and I, off the bat, like we have like we want to hear the stuff the same way. So, and that just like totally makes it that much easier when we're mixing, and we trust each other a lot. Like he really trusts me. I obviously really trust him too. So when we're working, it's like we're not sitting there like thinking, is like when I'm mixing, I'm not thinking like, oh, is John gonna like what I'm doing? Like I know that he likes what I do, and when I'm working, it's not something that's like in my brain where I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's something that he's gonna like and want to change when he's up there. It's like we just like vibe off of each other, and it's never like it's never difficult. It's always just like super easy, and it's like flows really well. And we get shit done like really fast. We mix really fast because we have the same mentality too with like not just like mixing without barriers, with the speakers, with the gear, with the plugins. We don't use hardly any plugins. We use like the same few plugins, and it's just easy and fast.
Yeah, that's cool to hear y'all have kind of, you that workflow and that trust where you don't have to second guess what he's doing. Um,
Hmm.
so one thing I was wondering about in general is how are these mixes delivered to you? Or I'm sure it
Hmm.
depends, but are you getting like, say, like a set of stereo stems off a project, or are you getting like a whole Pro Tools session where you got every single track at your
Both.
disposal?
Yeah, it's both. Most
Yeah.
of the time it stems, but now, um like if let's do it this way. So if I'm getting it from a different mixer, if I didn't mix the stereo, most of the time it's stereo stems, but it's like really broken up. Like people are very good now with giving me like pretty much everything. It's basically like if they were like just committing all their tracks
Mm.
individually through the mix bus or whatever. Um, Even though when you put it into a session, you start breaking it up into Atmos, it's like mixing from beyond scratch. Like no matter what, it's like some people think that like, oh, the stereo sounded good, so like when you put it into Atmos, you probably just need like a little EQ. Like no, every single time it is a whole brand new mix. It's never like, oh yeah, this sounds good. Let's just like pan around the room. You're good. Like that does not work at all in Atmos and spatial audio. So when we get the stems, like I said, most times people get the stems, give me great stems. And then what I do is so if I mix a stereo, then I'll have my assistants print every track out through the mix bus and everything, and then we'll put it into Atmos. And what we've been doing lately, which is I haven't been able to do this as much as I want to. I want this to become like the thing because it really actually does make a difference. Is when you mix the Atmos first, and then so like there's been a couple projects that have come to me that they're like they haven't done the stereo yet and they want me to do both versions. However, like Apple's really going to like get behind it, so they want to like get Apple the spatial mix first. So I will do the we'll do the spatial mix first, the Atmos mix first, and then there's something that happens when you fold down to stereo and then bring in your stereo template from there that puts you in this position that is like far beyond where you could like start from mixing in stereo, and it just does something where everything feels already so much wider and like way more 3D than if you had done it in stereo first. And it like sets you up for like a really really crazy stereo mix. Like I know for sure that like if I had mixed that song in stereo first, it wouldn't sound as good as if I had mixed it in Atmos first and brought it into stereo, which
Yeah.
is really exciting to me. Like I think that's really really cool. It's not like gonna be something that's gonna happen right away because people are still wanting the stereo mix first for the most part. But I think in the future it's gonna be very 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 cool.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty cool to hear that stuff like
Mhm.
that is happening. And
Mhm.
yeah, I've seen that actually that approach in a few different places where, they have the Atmos mix, then they'll like. Are you talking about like having the Atmos mix then doing like a separate like stereo mix from that Atmos session, or like using the
Yes,
I guess the
the fold
like
down. You're talking about the
yeah the
fold down?
fold down.
Yes, the fold down sounds great. Um, there's still like a few things where when you fold down, you lose some of the levels of certain things that you would like when you go into stereo. It's like the fold down is like 80% in my opinion. Like you and there's two issues though, is the extra 20% and also loudness because in stereo you need to be a lot louder than in Atmos. And then once you're trying to pump that volume up, things start to change anyways. Like, you're starting mixing into a limiter and stuff. But like it already so what I do is I take my Atmos mix, do a save as, and then use that stereo fold down though, and then put that into my stereo template. So basically all of those objects are routing to my subgroups, and then it comes out in stereo. But it's like it's starting from the stereo fold down, and it like already puts you in this crazy position like for success.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool, and I think that's what they also do in the film world. If I'm not wrong, they'll start a movie in Atmos, and then they'll go down from 7 1
I'm not
5
sure,
1.
but I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So it's cool to see that we'll transition to the music world. And I think that's pretty efficient too, from what it sounds like. Getting that
Yeah, I
all
mean,
that
in the
stuff.
long run, when you think about it, like once this is like really the standard, because like first of all, the technology's evolving. This is still the very beginning, and there are some things that people could that the technology could work on to like fix those different like level things. And when that happens, like we already have normalization on all the platforms, so like there's so many advantages to having a -18 mix with dynamics and transients and what you can have. Like once the song is normalized, it's going to feel as loud as a minus, 10 or -9 mix, whatever they choose to make it sound like, except for you're going to have drums that smack way harder. You're going to have like way more dynamics in your song. And then you just have one file. Like, because once that's like actually sorted, then you can do the Atmos and then it folds down into stereo within one file. So, and then you can have mastering engineer master that one file.
Yeah.
So there's no more like this person mixed this, like send the stems to this guy. And then, whoa, the stems are messed up. Like you got to do that again. And then like this person's mixing this, and then they're trying to make it sound like this guy's mix so that the artist doesn't get, you know, confused. They're like, why is this mix? Why does the spatial audio mix sound so different than the stereo mix? Like I like the stereo mix. And then someone's mastering the stereo, and then someone's like, then they're like, do I need mastering for Atmos? And then someone else is mastering. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just like it's
Hmm.
chaos. So now when this actually really becomes a thing, which I don't think we're too far off on, um, it will just be one file, one mixer, one mastering engineer, and it would save an enormous amount of time, an enormous amount of headache for the labels, for the producers, everything. And that I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be really cool when that happens.
Yeah, that sounds like something that's really interesting. Just having that one thing, will really save a lot of headaches and stuff. And I also agree with you having the, dynamics and stuff of, I guess -18. You're not killing your transients,
Mm-hmm.
having to smash the crap out of stuff to get to like -7
Exactly.
or negative
Mm-hmm.
nine.
Yep.
Um, so I'm gonna ask you about like some specific mixing stuff. So how much processing are you doing on these songs? I know you said uh, you're starting from scratch, with bringing
Mm-hmm.
that stereo mix to Atmos. So like, how many plugins are you putting on tracks and stuff? Are you
Mm-hmm.
mainly just balancing stuff and positioning, or are you going in?
It is a combination of all those things. You know, within stereo, you have left and right, but it's really like levels, right? And within the room, when you're moving stuff around, that changes levels too. And there's also size on the objects, which changes your perception of loudness too. And also like it like literally makes something sound like it's bigger or smaller. Um, you can't go down on size past like, what it normally is, but you can go up. And there's a lot of manipulation that you can do with that without having to do like plugin work. Like there's a lot of different like EQing things like perceptually that you can
Mm.
do with placement in the room and size. But we're like I do a lot of EQing, and I do a lot of like I've been using a lot of the ozone pen maximizer with the clipper on it. I think it's really, I mean, I'm a huge isotope fan.
Yeah.
Um, but I love doing that, and I'm adding like a lot of harmonics to a lot of things, and I use the Hazel rig and Fern gear, and I also have an Unfair Child. Um, and I use those things to kind of bring a lot of the life back into a lot of the tracks, because in stereo, especially when people are like really smushing things together and like trying to get that loudness, like really loud, you have to carve out a lot of space in order to get things to fit in with each other in stereo. And then in spatial audio and Atmos, you have such like your canvas is 10 times as big. So you can have things like you can like if like someone is like has a a pop record and there's like an acoustic guitar, like in pop a lot of times now, like you can only hear like the strings basically. Like you don't have the room to put the body of the
Yeah.
guitar into the mix. It doesn't fit. But in Atmos, if you spread it around, you can have that if you want it. And a lot of times I want to add more musicality. Even in stereo, I'm always adding more musicality because there's ways to create density and energy in a mix without squashing things. Like you can have like fundamentals and like music and harmonics in it and make it sound to me it sounds more energetic, and you can make it sound much bigger. And then in Atmos you can do so much more with that. So what I'm doing with plugins is mostly adding more harmonics back into the music. And that to me is like what our like what we hear is glue anyways. And I think a lot of people have an issue with like you know, in stereo, people rely on their mix bus as kind of like a crutch, because like you can just like shove stuff into there and like smash it and that's your glue. But it's also just not that's like not how you get the best outcome in my opinion. And with Atmos, there's no mix bus. So you're not gluing stuff together. Like you have to really know how to do that, how to like get that cohesive oneness sound without without compressing things together and without limiting things together. And to me, it's harmonics.
Yeah. So are you having you have no mix bus at all on your Atmos
None.
mixes?
No, no.
And
Everything's individual.
yeah.
Sometimes what we'll do is like send stuff. We'll send stuff to like a 7-1. We're trying this now. Like I don't do this a lot, but I'm trying it now because in theory I think it will work. But and it's not that we need like I don't feel like I need any more glue. But something I'm going to be trying is sending stuff through an aux to like a 7-1 bed, because the beds can't do 9-1.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna do that and like put some sort of processing on that as like a parallel, maybe. I'm not like a big parallel mixer, but I think that like it could be cool for energy and see what it does.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times like so for like in stereo, John and I we mix through we go out of the Hilo into the DW Fern VT5 and then back into the Lavery Savitra, the new Lavery Gold, and we clip into that. And I'm doing that in Atmos as well, on like the bass, like on bass, or sometimes I'll like put the kick and bass together to get that energy. So like I'll put them together in the same object, and I'll like put a Pro Q with that's like adds like clean gain. Um, and then so I'll put like 10 dB of gain, because we're so much lower.
Yeah.
Like I'm so much lower in Atmos than I'm going to be in stereo. So I'll add 10 dB of gain, then put the VT5 on, and then so that it'll come out like what it is in stereo. So it'll be clipping the Lavery going back in, and then 10 dB. Then I'll take 10 dB off again, so that I'm like actually at the level that we're supposed to be. And that adds like a lot of energy, which is really cool.
So are you doing the library stuff in parallel with the 7.2 bus?
No,
Or is
that's
that?
like the main kick and
Oh,
bass sound.
yeah, that's me
Yeah.
kicking. All right, cool. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that's cool.
Mhm.
So I know you mentioned adding harmonics. You got the Fern gear and the Hazel
Mhm.
Ray gear, the Unfairchild. But
Mhm.
is there do you have any go-to plugins? I know you
Yeah,
mentioned that was a
Tube
maximizer, but
by Goodhertz.
tube.
I use that a lot. Tube is awesome. And the maximizer with the clipper use a lot. It's mainly just like literally those things. It's tube maximizer, the ozone 10 maximizer, and the VLCs and VNEs too.
Yeah, that's cool. So I had
Mhm.
another question about in these records, are you adding any additional reverb? Are you adding like any additional space to the songs
Yes.
at all?
So most times I do like, and even if it's like almost inaudible, there's we've created a reverb that goes throughout the room, that can go throughout the room like this or like this up above you, and within tempo of the song. And I use that a lot. And it's like a lot of times you can't really hear it, but it creates like a cohesion and a more like energy throughout the room that's like very, very cool. And when you hear it, that doesn't feel like anything's like washed out, but you feel like everything's more connected, and like you kind of have a feeling of the certain elements more around you than in one specific place.
Mm.
So I use that a lot. And we use like different objects. So there's like a group of objects that go throughout the room, and they have a delay for each one to go like at a different pace. Um, that's tempo sync to the song. So like I have like one send, I'll send it and it'll go to all of them, and then you like hear it kind of like moving throughout the room.
So you'll send like to like a guitar or something to that
Yeah, like
delay
a
thing,
guitar
and it will
synth,
just
or
kind of fill up the room
yeah,
based
even
on
a
the
vocal too.
yeah,
But like,
vocal.
and we'll automate to like in different spots, like, for like vocal throws, or like sometimes I'll have it at like, minus 20, like throughout the whole thing. And like, you can't really hear it, but you feel it. And then there's a few, like one is the Seventh Heaven
Yeah,
plugin. And then we use another one is a Megaverb by Goodhertz. And then we have another one that is Shimmer, the Valhalla.
yeah. So when I don't think Shimmer is it's not multi-channel, is it right? It's
No,
yeah,
but they're
stereo.
just
So
stereo pairs
yeah, okay. So
of
are you doing
objects.
the thing
Yeah.
where you delay it like 1/32nd, one whatever
Yeah, yeah.
64th,
Hmm.
and then just
Hmm.
have those around the room?
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's a
Hmm.
nice approach. So
And
uh,
it's just in my template, like off to the side. So like if I just want it to do it, like because it automatically links to the tempo. So like if I want to do it, I'll just put like a send and just put the send up, and then it does the whole thing.
yeah,
So I don't have to think about it.
hmm. Yeah, it's a cool technique. Um, so are you mixing all objects when you're doing Atmos? Are you
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah,
Like yes, it's all objects.
yeah.
I don't
So
use the bed at all.
mhm.
So the only time I'll use a bed sometimes is like if I have something off to the sides here, and I want to hear it like a little bit in the front, and I'm like a little lazy, like instead of just duplicating it and making another object. Or not if I'm lazy, like if there is if I'm running out of objects too. um what I'll do is I'll just like take the sound and put a send to the bed in the front, just so I can hear it a little bit more in the front, like so that it makes it feel like it's more like kind of enveloping you. But even then, I do that super rarely.
Yeah. So when you started learning how to mix, were you ever experimenting with the bed? I've seen so many different Atmos approaches. Some people use it, some people don't use it, and like
Well, the
why not
first,
use it?
yeah, the the first person that I like actually saw mix in Atmos, and he taught me like kind of how um just like the how it kind of worked, was Nick Reeves. And he had spent like a day with me and was just kind of like walking me through and showing me like his approaches and stuff like that. And he used the bed a little bit, but he was the first person that was like, objects just sound better and you have more flexibility. And I started hearing that a lot um, from some other people too. There's obviously not a lot of people that started before me, but from most people, that was like kind of the general consensus, that objects sounded better. And to me, when I like, even now when I don't really, check back and forth. I don't like put something somewhere and then be like, does this sound better as an object or in the bed? Like it's just an object. Like I don't. in my mind, I'm like objects sound better. And when I have done testing, I've thought that they sounded better, but it's possible that it's like some like not real thing that like mixers think that the objects sound better,
Yeah.
but it could be like one of those like like mind tricks that you're like playing on yourself because it sounds different. Like it does sound different. I don't know if like sounds better. Like I like when I tried it, I felt like you had like more transients and it felt like more alive when it was an object. So I just stuck with it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you with the objects approach. I think to me that was when I kind of started doing some mixing in Atmos or just messing around with it. I feel like the approach of the objects was just more intuitive. You know, it's how you think about
Hmm.
position sounds as opposed to messing around with the bed and
Hmm.
having to route everything to the buses and I don't know
Yeah, yeah,
that just confused me for some reason. So
yeah, yeah. I agree.
yeah, the next thing I wanted to ask about was uh binaural settings for
Hmm.
how what's your approach to that?
It's tough. I mean, for me, honestly, I just put everything near. I think it sounds the best. I just and the first person that told me that, like because I talk a lot with Dale Becker, and
Mm,
Dale actually started this before me too, and he's an amazing ally in music in general. Um, but we go back and forth all the time on all of these different things, and still constantly experimenting on different things. And he was we went back and forth on the binaural thing, and to me, I just feel like and I think he still feels the same way, but the near is it just a better representation of what it sounds like. So for
yeah,
now,
yeah,
things are constantly changing though. So
yeah. That's cool to hear. Yeah, I've I've seen it where people put like near and then they'll put like reverbs as far, but you have everything near.
everything is near.
Yeah,
And I've tried the things that people were doing like in the beginning where they were doing object like object beds where they were like doing
yeah,
a near mid and far,
yeah,
and it's like so complicated. I'm like, dude, this is not how I want to mix. Like I don't want to like have to be thinking about where I'm putting, like I want to just like be in a flow state and like feel the music and not think about like, oh, this has to be like this because the headphones, like that's not how I want to work at all.
yeah. I think the object bed thing is pretty interesting. I was experimenting with it a bit, and I mean, I guess the advantage of it is you can send have one thing and just send it to multiple speakers and have it fill up the
Hmm.
room more. But at the same time, it's again, it's not intuitive as just having like the object. Like here's the kick drum. This is the
Hmm.
object. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
I just thought that was that was way better.
Hmm.
So I wanted to talk about you mentioned Dale Becker. So I believe is he your like Atmos mastering kind of
Atmos
go
and
to?
stereo. I mean, I work
Yeah,
with,
Atmos and
yeah, I
stereo.
work
Yeah.
with, yeah, I work with a lot of people. I have some great friends that are great mastering engineers, and um, Dale and I work a lot together. And I mean, especially, I mean, for Atmos, he's the one. Like, I mean, he's the best. And yeah, we just have a great workflow too. Like uh, since, like I said, since the beginning, we're just like, how do we figure this shit out? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? What am I doing? Like, what's up with like, this and that? And when I really figured out how to get like the translation and get the vocal to sound like super upfront and not have like a washed out thing and be able to have the kick and low end really like hit, then that really solidified like how I I approach make this like mixing, and also just dictated everything else too, because like once you figure out one thing, then that thing dictates how everything else happens. And then the spatial audio mixes started translating and getting like really big sounding, and then I sent it to him to master, and he he like understands what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and then we have like this great workflow of um like sending stuff back and forth, and I totally just trust him because his ears are crazy, and he's like super smart, and I just like never have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's so great when I get to have him master, because there's still projects that still don't understand yet that like you can really benefit from Atmos mastering. Um, and luckily, the ones that do are like the biggest projects, and
Yeah.
also like full albums, which is even more makes it way more important to have mastering too in general. Um, because that's what he does for that, and like with like loudness and leveling things out and cohesion throughout the whole process is like having him as the second, you know, set of ears like afterwards is like priceless.
Yeah. That's cool to hear. So in terms of like what's he doing? Is he just kind of uh, um doing like kind of final tweaks and stuff like that, doing
Hmm.
QCing, like sequencing,
Yeah,
loudness,
sequencing.
all that
Yep,
stuff?
yep,
Yeah.
all of that. Yeah, and because when I send when anyone sends a file, an ADM for mastering it, it opens up into all the objects. So it's like basically he gets to do what he wants to do, like what he would want to do in stereo, but he has more control over. Like he can actually do the things that he wants to hear in a like, not that he doesn't get to be able to do it in stereo because he obviously does, but like he just has more control, and whoever's mastering anybody's project has more control as a mastering engineer. And like obviously, you know, don't get don't get too crazy and start changing things around like crazy.
Yeah.
But like if he's hearing like a build up somewhere, it's way easier to get rid of the build up in an Atmos mix, because like you can find the one thing that has the build up. You know what I mean? Rather than when you take out 400 on a stereo mix, like you're taking 400 out of everything. Um, so I think that's got to be cool for him as a mastering engineer too, where he can probably achieve the things that he hears probably a little easier. And then so like he'll put I still don't even fully understand how he does this, but he'll put all the songs in one session, and it fans out into like all the objects, and he just with his brain can figure it all out, and that's what he does.
Yeah, I mean that's really impressive, and it's cool that you guys have that relationship. And I think it's definitely worth it to have like that second set, someone else checking up on stuff and making it
Yeah,
all work together. So
yeah. Like for the SZA album, we had like, I don't know, we had like 4 or 5 days to mix like 24 songs, and then send it to Dale. And Dale and his crew were up 24/7 for like, I don't know, 2 weeks anyways. But that project is he mastered the stereo and the Atmos, and we were just like on like sending stuff back and forth like 3, 4, 5 in the morning, you know. And when he was sending it to me, I was like, I don't know if I'm like unbelievably tired or this is like the best sounding thing I've ever heard. I don't know what you're doing. And it was
yeah.
it was the best sounding thing. It was just him. It wasn't that I was tired.
Yeah. So I mean, let's talk about a little bit about the SOS album. So,
Mm-hmm.
you had I was just looking through like the credits, a couple hours ago, and you got so many mix engineers. Jason Joshua, John Castelli. You got Serban on there, Rob
Mm-hmm.
Biesel, I think is how you pronounce it.
Rob Essel,
Bessel.
he's SZA's engineer,
Yeah.
and Manny was on there too.
Manny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sean Everett, I think was another one I saw. So a lot of
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
people.
There's
So
another mixer too. Dana. Dana mixed a few songs on there too.
I mean, how did you glue together all those mixes coming from different people and everything like that in that
It's
must
yeah,
mixing?
it's a process. It's a process. That was, I mean, man, I was up till I mean, there was a lot of all-nighters for sure
Mm,
on that project, because we didn't have that much time. But it's, when in Atmos, it's really tricky to keep, how do I word this? To keep the intention of like how the stereo sounds, but also fulfill like the like I know what is possible in an Atmos mix. Do you know what I mean?
hmm.
So like I ride that line a lot where it's like I know that, and it depends on who I'm working with as well too, because there's some artists that are like, do your thing. Like I want it to sound crazy and I want this to happen and I want shit flying around. Most people don't want shit flying around. Um, but I ride this line with where like I know the intention, the energy that they're putting into this, and that they're getting out of the stereo mix, and I don't want to. I want to keep it as true to that, but also I know that there's so much more room to make this sound, that much bigger, because Atmos has such a bigger canvas on it. So um I think I found a good like middle ground where I don't ever feel like I don't ever I, for the most part I don't ever feel like, man, I could have done more. You know what I mean? Like I could have made it bigger or whatever. Like I pretty much go for that. I go for like, let's make it as big as possible because I think that's what translates best to spatial audio anyways. And what, um, uh, still, it still gives, it doesn't feel different. Like it doesn't make it feel too different from the stereo mix, but it just makes it sound much bigger and more like enveloping. So when we get like these different, all these songs from the different mixers, I my my focus is to make it sound as big as possible and trans like the best that it can, but keep the energy and like diff volume relations the same. You know what I mean? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah,
So like the drums and the vocal and like how wet her vocal is, like that was something that's actually like made the whole project easier to sound cohesive because of how wet her vocal was in all the songs and most of the
mm,
songs. And like she is such a distinct voice. And because it's like really wet and has like this, and that lends itself crazy to spatial audio, anyways. You know what I mean? Like the more like depth and emotion and like reverb that someone wants without it getting washed out sounding, but like that already is like a win for me. And then that also creates a lot of cohesion throughout the different songs because there's a lot of different sounding songs on there that have do a lot of different things. But the same thing, the constant is her vocal. So like it's the same thing where it's like I'm just focusing on her vocal, the drums, and making everything sound really big and enveloping, and then make that low end go crazy because
yeah.
that's what she wants anyways.
I mean, speaking of low end, do you have any advice for low end and Atmos? Do you use like the LFE at all to
I use the
create
LFE.
low end?
I do use the LFE, but not a lot. I'll never use the LFE to get the low end that I want. I use it for like extra floor. Like I call it floor, like when you want to feel like your
Yeah.
feet a little bit more.
Hmm.
But also like I have these big PMCs, so like I can like really, really get detailed with low end. So so for the most part, I'll get it. I'll get the low end how I want it in the left and right, and then I'll add some extra LFE for fun. And sometimes I use a little bit of LFE if I'm too close on the true peak because true peak
Mm,
can get you can kind of get caught up with yourself when you're loading um a set of speakers too much. So like sometimes I'll offload a little bit of the low end to the LFE if I'm like if I'm getting close to the true peak where it's gonna be like where I'm like a little uncomfortable, like I'll add just like a little bit of LFE and take down a little bit on the left and right. But that's not most of the time I don't do that, but that's a trick that can be done if you're getting close on true peak.
yeah. That's cool. In terms of like positioning low end elements like drums and bass, do you generally have that stuff like just up the center and then play with the size, and is that like a way to do it?
I
And
tend to, yeah, the kick and bass are always in the left and right. There's
left and right.
sometimes like
Yeah.
if there's like
Mm,
different layers of the bass that like a more like a buzzy or like tactile sound or whatever, like you can spread that around the room. Um, but I for the 99% of the time kicking bass are in the fronts, and then for the rest of the drums, it can I tend to sometimes I spread them out a little bit because this is how I look at it in in spatial audio. Um, well, in stereo you have your left and right, and that's like the widest position. Um, but the way that I look at Atmos is the side speakers are your left and right, like so that you could actually spread around like around you. It's probably hard to see, but like the side speakers
yeah.
like this, yeah, I view as like left and right,
Hmm.
and then the left, right, and center is the center. So like you put the low end there, but then you can spread everything around you, and then the image becomes so much wider. And that's one of the reasons why, to me, having a 914 system is so important because the wides that are here, sorry, you can't see me, that are like here facing
Yeah.
at you, is the way that you make all of that cohesive, make it all sound like one spread thing that comes at you. And when you have a 7-1 room, you don't have the wides. So then there's like a huge hole right here. So when it like according to like to drums and like percussion stuff, I will spread them or start spreading them around. And like sometimes I'll put like a main synth sound or the main piano sound or whatever on the sides because like that's the thing I want the widest. So then you have like this whole picture around you, like enveloping you instead of just something that's in front of you. So like percussion and different things, I'll start spreading around, and sometimes I'll even bring snares in the room. Like I'll even start bringing them in the
Oh
room
yeah.
because then you can get even more transients out of them, and it starts changing things, especially when it comes to translation anywhere and stuff. Like it actually can create like a really cool energy.
So do you tend to put stuff like more? I know you got like in the room and then outside the room, right? Like
Mhm.
on the board, or do
Like
you
there's
like
like in the
put stuff
speaker,
outside?
yeah, and then like the farthest you can go is in the speaker, and then
Yeah.
you can start bringing things in the room.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So are there any like no go zones in terms of panning? You feel like don't don't pan here if you don't if it won't translate well at all, or like
No,
position.
I'm very, very particular about what goes in the heights and the ceilings.
Mm.
Like I don't ever put like main sounds up there. Um, that's pretty much my only thing. Um, and like if you want low end, it's gotta to me it's gotta be in the front. Otherwise, it's just like you don't want low end coming from behind you. It sounds weird.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's cool. So, I mean, when you're referencing, I know you mentioned you had that 914 setup. Are you mainly just on that most of the times? Are you like flipping? Do you have AirPods like Pros? I mean, Maxes?
Yeah,
Are you
I
flipping?
use I use the AirPod Maxes
Mm,
for referencing because to me the AirPod Maxes are like literally the best headphones ever. For stereo, for Atmos, for spatial, for anything. They're just so true and they're
mm,
so accurate, and they're also, I mean, besides like they're also super comfortable, and they're just literally perfect. And I find that they're the most like telling headphones. And whenever I get something sound perfect on those, it always sounds perfect on the Pros. Like the Pros are much easier to please than the Maxes. So I'm constantly like I think I have 5 pairs of AirPod Maxes. They're like I have to have them wherever I am. Um, so yes, that's what I check on. I'm just like whenever I'm done with the speaker mix, I'll print a spatial test and I run it through the render, re-render it as an MP4, and then I put it in my files on my phone and I listen on the headphones.
yeah, that's cool. So I had one question about like dolls and stuff. So, I know Logic has that ability to like instantly switch. I
Hmm.
think you can switch to the Apple
The Apple renderer,
yeah, the
yes.
renderer. So
Hmm.
why use like Pro Tools over? Is it because of the
Well,
routing and stuff?
it's the routing and also that it's not compatible with like what I said with 914. It's only
Yeah.
seven one
Mm,
four or 712. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Um, and also I'm like my comfort zone. Like I know Pro Tools. Like I don't have to think about it at all. And I'm sure that like if I had gotten into like if I needed to get into Logic, like I could figure it out. But like I'm just super super fast and comfortable with Pro Tools, and the way that the systems are set up with the speakers and everything, and all there's like so much like intricacy when it comes to like all the routing and all the stuff. Like I don't know enough about if it would how it would work, and but also I would lose the wides, which to me are like arguably the most important speakers.
Mm,
I've tried to like bringing an ADM into Logic to to check through the spatial render, and to me it's just like I've gotten my room to sound like I don't have a problem with like when I don't like ever print a song, re-render it and be like, wait, I don't like what's happening. And you know what I mean? I don't like if I hear a note in my headphones, I can just like do that little quick thing in Pro Tools and just print it back out. And I noticed that when I put the ADM, there might be a way around this, but when I put the ADM into Logic, it fans out into mono objects, and
Mm.
I don't know how to link in Logic how to link the two tracks. And then it's like you got to put an EQ on like two tracks in order because everything in my mixes are they're stereo objects. I never use mono objects. Um, Unless I'm putting something like automating it around the room, then that'll be a mono object. But yeah, to me, I was like, I'm like, this is just taking so much more time than if I didn't do this. So there was also a way too that people were um, like coming out of the render and going into Logic in real time. But there's a it's not accurate because the render is decoding the audio and then the Apple render is decoding it again. So it's not the exact same thing
Yeah,
as what you're actually hearing. But if you put an ADM into Logic, I think it does to me it sounds exactly like what spatial audio sounds like.
that's interesting that you use all like stereo objects too. I mean, is that just because of the stems the way they are? Because I've heard,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know where I heard this, but I think I remember saying some people like they were talking about how the mono objects sound better.
No,
Yeah.
and also it's like I don't really want like one thing to be like there. Like, you know what I
Mm,
mean? Like most things are like most things like especially in pop music are like when you think about them in stereo too, there's not like one thing that's like just in the right
yeah,
speaker. Like or if it if it is, then that's that one thing, you know what I mean? But almost everything else is going to be a stereo, something that's represented all around in the mix.
yeah.
So it
So
does
you're
the mono thing didn't make sense to me.
yeah, so you're taking like that. You know, you got when stereo, I believe it's like shows up as two objects, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then you're you know stretching it out like this to the sides.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Or when you bring them into the room, it looks like
yeah,
this,
into
and
the
then you
room.
change the size, and yeah.
Yeah, nice, nice, nice. And in terms of height, are you manipulating that at all? Like,
Yeah, I use a little bit of height. Sometimes like I said earlier, you can manipulate frequency, like how you hear like frequencies a little bit with placements. And I've been feeling that I feel that when you use like a little bit of height, it can help get rid of some muddiness. Like it makes like kind of elevates it a little bit, makes it sound something like a little bit brighter. So sometimes I'll do that instead of grabbing for an EQ. Um, and just getting some elevation on some stuff, but I'm not a heavy height user
yeah,
personally.
mm,
And those effects though that I told you about that like go through the room, those go through the heights. That's like the main use in like how I use the heights, the
yeah.
ceiling speakers.
Mm. Do you ever go below, like, I guess the center line on the floor at all?
No, I don't use that view either. Like whatever it just is where it is.
Yeah,
I don't even know how like I don't even know if you can do that actually.
yeah. Maybe you can.
If you
I
can make
might
it
be
work.
misremembering what the what some of the parameters are.
I mean, it would make sense. It could be cool to do that.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can, but that would be cool.
yeah,
I could see some use for that.
yeah, yeah. It could be interesting. So wanted to get back to having multiple studios. So how does having what's the advantage of having you have the atmosphere like Rochester, right, in New York,
Mhm.
and you got
Yeah, so we had two rooms here in LA and then one in Rochester as well. So I grew up in Rochester. Candace and I both did. My
mm,
family's there, and really the reason that I did it was just so that I could go visit my family because I was too busy.
wow,
Like, yeah, I've had a studio there that was stereo, um, um, that I've had, for 15 years. And I'm just super, super close to my family. And it was getting like got to the point where like I need to spend time with them. Like I want to be with them as much as I possibly can. And I was just not having enough time to go there because I had too much work. And my family was coming out here a lot. I mean, they love coming out here anyways because LA is awesome. But for birthdays and different things, like I wanted to be able to just like if I wanted to go back to Rochester and be with them, I wanted to be able to do that. So I built this. I turned, we gutted the whole thing and completely redid it in Atmos.
yeah, that's interesting to hear that I guess made that commitment to build that another whole another studio. It's not like
Mhm.
a B room. It's still a
Yeah,
crazy like
Yeah, it's still the
PMC,
top level. Yeah,
topped out,
yeah.
top of the line.
MV3 XPDs. Yep.
Yeah,
Because that's how I want. Again, that's how I want to work. Like when I'm there, I want to like I want nothing in my way. Like I want to have the best of the best, and I'm lucky enough to be able to make that happen and to be able to go there and like feel like I mean the room's insane. It's like it's sounds unbelievable, like the best sounding room I've heard. Um,
yeah,
and and then here in LA with the two rooms is just being busy and having the engineers underneath me be able to mix while I'm mixing too.
yeah.
So
That's cool. So will y'all like send stuff back and forth between setups? Will you have other
mhm.
engineers occupy?
Yes,
Like yeah, what's going on?
yep, yeah. So they're like we're on the same like Dropbox and stuff like that where we have both of the computers. They're like they have the same templates and plugins and everything, and it all just shares the same thing. So, and there's times too where like John and I are working together on an album, and it's just like you know some like he'll start down like we'll both be starting different stuff, and then we'll pass it back and forth. That doesn't happen as much because we like you know feeding off the energy and stuff, but like sometimes you gotta just do it. You're under a deadline, and there's times where like where I'm doing a whole album or something, or like an album plus back catalog, and I have my assistants prepping downstairs, or then or someone starting other mixes that are coming in, and then like all of a sudden I'll get like a rush order in, and I'm like gotta flip it around where they're like
Yeah,
you know like prepping down there, and then I'm working on that thing, and then you know it's good to be able to just you know be available for whatever comes in.
yeah, yeah. It sounds like a lot of stuff's going on, but that's obviously amazing that you're like busy enough where you can
Hmm.
have the whole team and different facilities and
Right.
stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so who ended up designing your studios?
Well, it's a good question. My good friends in they call themselves Unfuck Your Studio.
Is that
They
Spider and
Spider and Rory,
Rory? Yeah,
Kyle, yeah, and so they we're actually doing new studios now. We're in the process of finalizing a lease in the new building where we're going to be moving the atmosphere. And they're designing the studios, and um, they've helped me with these studios as well. They're not like their full like unfuck designs, but since they're my close friends, like they'll be like, yeah, you should do this, this, and this, and this, like this is how you should do this, and this is how you should do that and stuff. And then I have my own kind of like ideas on like as far as like aesthetics, that's all me and
yeah,
Candace,
nice.
my fiance. And then in Rochester, we had our friend Ibru Kuyak, who's like superstar designer, and she's doing the atmosphere with us too. And she helped us with that one. But yeah, in the as far as acoustics though, the Unfuck guys are the ones that are like guiding the way.
So
And
with
then
this,
these new studios are going to be so insane. They
yeah,
really like they've really cracked the code on some new shit that's like really revolutionary, like new thinking, perfect sounding rooms. And it's really exciting stuff.
so with these new studios, so I guess atmosphere right now it's like you're in a building. So with these new studios, is it
Mhm.
gonna be more like a compound, like a traditional
Yes,
studio where you have multiple rooms, Atmos rooms operating at the
there's going
same
to be
time?
multiple rooms. Yeah, but it's the way that the building's laid out is that they're kind of like floating, like on mezzanines, so, like on a second floor that you can kind of like.
Hmm.
It's hard to
Yeah.
describe, but like the
That's
bottom
interesting.
will be like the whole main bottom section of the studio is going to be kind of like a big open like Soho House type like lounge kitchen and stuff, and all, like a place for like the industry, like a melting pot for the industry where people can come and just like hang out and stuff. And then upstairs on floating mezzanines are where the studios are going to be. It's like it's pretty crazy. It's hard to describe, but it's like it's gonna be nuts.
Yeah, that sounds crazy, and it's cool that
Yeah.
stuff like that's still happening. Like new
Mhm.
facilities are opening up in audio, and when a lot of big studios are kind of closing or shutting down and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the same, like, it's not the same business. Like, we're not getting
Yeah.
into the studio business. It's like we need the rooms for us to mix
Mm,
in, you know?
yeah.
And then for people that need to rent rooms, they can go to Just for the Record. My friend
Yeah.
Moritz owns that, and those are the best like studios for rent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's cool.
give him a little shout out.
Yeah. It also reminds me of what's the gift shop, right? Isn't that John Costello's kind of?
That's John's room. Yeah,
He's
that's
got
John's
like the
place.
dinner table and like the
Yeah,
couches. Just a
yeah,
cool
yeah,
place. Like it's a cool vibe, you know.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So as far
Definitely.
as the future of Atmos, you know, we talk about the cars and stuff, but
Mhm.
where do you see it like just going 5 years from now and just yeah the future and
I I see a very bright future for spatial audio, for immersive audio,
yeah,
for Atmos, for all of it. I think that you know, Apple with its new VR headset. I think everyone's their new VR headsets with everyone's headphones are spatial audio. Every streaming platform is going to be spatial audio. All the cars are going to be immersive audio. It's going to be, to me, like very soon it will be the way that everyone ingests music. I think I think that that's like clear. I mean, it's even in CES, like you see all these things that are just like they seem like they're from like 2000, like 2300, the year 2300. Like I don't know, like this shit
yeah,
just looks like everything's like in space, like spaceships and stuff. Like, but it's real. The stuff's there. Like they made the stuff. Like all like the glasses that have the immersive like ear things and like it tells like you there's a like you can point to a word and it will translate it in your glasses.
yeah,
You can like it'll translate speech, it'll give you directions and navigation, and like no one can see anything in your glasses. They look like regular clear glasses, but to you you're seeing these things. Like
yeah,
it's just like technology is growing so fast, and it's exciting to see like where things are going to go. Like I don't know exactly how it's going to go or what is going to be the platform that's like going to be mixed in or whatever, but I know whatever Apple's doing, I'm there with them.
yeah. Stay
You know
with
what I mean?
Apple.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, no, it's definitely that's definitely a good bet because they always seem to find ways to figure out stuff and
yeah,
yeah,
hmm
and I think when that Apple headset I do like a lot some work in the like the XR like VR space and programming and
hmm
stuff. So I
hmm
think once Apple releases their thing, I think MS is going to be a huge part of that device in a
yeah.
few different ways. And once that
The
comes,
metaverse and all that stuff too. Like
yeah,
I don't really know anything about it personally, but I just everything's immersive. Like the future is immersive. Period. So let's get
yeah,
on it.
yeah. Uh, have you heard anything about like I've seen people talk about maybe Spotify, Atmos coming to
hmm
Spotify?
Yeah, I mean, I I hear things where they're like, yeah, they're doing it. It's like it already happened, and like then like it's gonna be any minute now. And then I hear people are like, I don't know, like they have to like. I don't think anyone. I mean, no one that I know, I don't think really knows exactly what's gonna happen with them. But I mean, like I would assume that they have to do something soon. Like
Yeah,
I mean, it just I don't know why they wouldn't, but
yeah. I've seen a few people mentioning it. I think that Spotify built that new studio in LA or
yeah,
recently, and they have a
yeah.
bunch of Atmos rooms in there, which is
Oh, so
uh,
there you go. I mean, it's got
interesting. So
yeah,
maybe a hint on where they're moving
yeah.
towards. Maybe
hmm
not.
hmm
But yeah, it's cool. Exciting future.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
yeah,
Because I think that's another, like, one of the reasons why I think people, especially up and coming artists, well, I mean, everyone uses Spotify is because of like the stream count. Like it just shows the stream count, and it's like the way to build, momentum and build clout and stuff. And I think that's like Apple Music before was not very user friendly, like in the playlisting and all that stuff. And now it's gotten like really, really good. And the quality of Apple Music, even like, in stereo or anything, is so much better than
yeah,
Spotify. but I think people are still comfortable using Spotify with their playlisting, and also, like I said, the stream count I think is a really big win for them. So I think that them doing a spatial, some sort of spatial, is like would be great for everybody, for them and for the artists too.
Yeah,
And again, it just creates more playlists for more up and coming artists to get featured and get their music heard.
yeah. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that play count because that's something, you know, I see a lot on Spotify, but I never really thought of that
Mhm.
like having such a profound impact on people's experience and stuff. And
Yes.
yeah, thanks for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, anytime. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for asking me to hang out and answer some questions and talk. I'm excited about all this stuff, so I love to share, and I want to help people and you know raise awareness about this whole thing, because I think that it's going to be amazing for a lot of people. It's going to be amazing for engineers. It's going to be amazing for producers, for artists, and I just want people to start hearing it, and start really getting to know it so that they can benefit from it. So I'm just kind of trying to yell as loud as I can from all the rooftops, and
yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
if anyone has any questions or hit me up, feel free to hit me up on Instagram or whatever, and I try to answer people who have mixing questions or whatever, anything. I'm
Yeah.
down to help.
Hopefully you enjoy that interview. If you have any questions, hit up Mike's Instagram. And if you want to hear more about Mike's mixing process, don't forget to check out his Dolby Atmos mixing masterclass at Sweetwater. The link to get tickets will be in the description below.